Hi everybody, welcome back to Motoworks, and today we want to show you what for us is a bit of a rare thing, and that is the path of how something like this poor forlorn pile of parts sitting in a sea container becomes this, because that is the same motorcycle. So what you see in both images is a 1972 BMW R75/5. And our friend went to look at some other machines that were for sale, and in the corner of that sea container sat that pile of parts. And while he was there, he bought that pile of parts as well, having no idea what he was going to do with them. There was no title, there were things missing. And we ended up buying it from him. It sat for a bit in our care, and then our customer, our commission for this restoration, one of the things he had not yet done with the sport was restore a vintage bike. So this was the perfect opportunity for him to do something with this great sport that he had never done before. And it all begins with inventory. Like that pile of parts, when you bring all of that home, you first are going to look at what's missing, and then you start digging into disassembly. What is the condition? You can learn sometimes circumstances like, why did it get taken apart? Was it damaged, or was it blown up, or had something had broken? And in this case, we found that things were consistently in pretty good shape, and a couple of things were in extraordinary condition. It was alleged that the gearbox had been completely rebuilt and then set aside, waiting for the bike to be put back together someday. We discovered that all of the gearbox internals were brand new. That group of parts now well into $2,000+ for all new gearbox internals. So that was a big score. And overall, it was in pretty good shape. The fuel tank was in pretty good shape. Everything needed to be refinished and reconditioned. Everything that's being refinished goes out the door in a number of different directions, because those specialists are going to refinish those parts. So the frame, all of the small black parts like headlight bucket, ears, the frame, swing arm, subframe, and a bunch of others, they all go to get blasted and to powder coated. And in between blast and powder coat, everything has to be examined for cracks. All of the welds have to be examined to make sure that everything is in good condition. And we have to make sure that everything is straight, because we don't know whether or not the bike's been in an accident, and that's why it was disassembled. And the bodywork all goes off to be stripped and bodywork done and primed. Everything else is cut up. The wheels are cut up. We just take bolt cutters and we cut all of the old spokes, and the hub goes to blast and vapor blast. The rims, if they're straight enough, go to polish. So these are original rims, but they've been polished out farther than the factory ever did. Same thing's true for the brake stay and the brake arms. And you start accumulating all of the puzzle pieces. The polished stainless steel hardware, even though you keep all of the original hardware and clean it, tumble it, and then send all the original hardware out and get that zinc plated, because there are going to be places that you're going to use proprietary hardware. And then you start to bring in the preferences that you have either for yourself or that your customer has. This particular customer likes orange. The only orange that BMW/5s were done with is not really much of an orange. It's called curry, and it's a little bit on the drab side. So this is a much later BMW color called flame orange that would have been on K1200 GT, K1200S. Hand-done black pinstripes that we did in a little bit more subdued way. The pinstripes are a little thinner than what the factory would have done. That was a customer call. He wanted something that was a little more nuanced, not quite as bold in the stripes. And then you start to do sub-assemblies. So the forks get reconditioned and set aside. The wheels get built and set aside. And there comes this moment in the project where you realize it's time to start putting things back together. All of the puzzle pieces are in place. You arrive at wheels up for the chassis. The wheels are built, the tires are mounted, and the suspension components are hung, and the chassis becomes something that is a roller and it can move around the shop. And while that is happening, you're in the middle of doing drivetrain rebuilds. We're all the way down to the crankshaft. The engine is completely disassembled. Everything is being measured, reground if need be. In this case, we were lucky it was a low mileage engine, so all we had to do was polish out the journals on the crankshaft and it was ready to go back in. So new main bearings, freshly serviced crankshaft, pistons, rings, freshly bored cylinders, valves, guides, springs, everything that goes into the valve train is all new. The brakes are reconditioned. The brake shoes get new linings. The gearbox internals were all in extraordinarily good condition. They were all new, and new bearings and new seals is standard after that. And then you can move on to controls, ergonomics, get a wiring harness laid in place, and it starts to come back together. And then this wonderful thing that happens every time is, hey, this thing's starting to look like a motorcycle again. And you're struck by, frankly, how beautiful it is as it starts to come together. You have to keep in mind that you've had all these little pretty things spread out all over the shop. And as they start to all coalesce around the frame and the suspension, that it's an incredibly powerful and invigorating moment. That's the food that keeps us going. And then before you know it, the fuel tank is not on, but it's ready to start. So we run the bike on the bottle. So we hang an artificial fuel tank from these little straps up here, and we give some fuel, and we start it up for the first time. And that too is a powerfully invigorating moment as well. And the next thing you know, you've got a fuel tank on, you're checking tire pressures, and you're ready to do first test rides. And then you're out the door and keeping your distances really close, getting a couple of heat cycles in the engine, listening to the valve train, retorquing the top end, resetting valve clearances, checking output from the brand new charging system that you've done, because this bike, as all of the airheads that we do full services on, 450 watt high output charging system, a solid state ignition that is timed off the end of the crankshaft, not the cam, and then distributed fused circuits where the diode board used to live. We have this wonderful little piece of real estate, and we can add fused circuits for the entire machine. It's a level of safety and a level of ergonomic expansion. So auxiliary lighting, heated gear for riding in the winter, power for a tank bag to keep your devices charged while you're riding. It opens up a lot of doors and helps a vintage machine have a little modernity to make it easier to live with day to day. And then it's test ride time. Then you're out for longer stretches, 50, 100 miles, and then it's time to retorque, valve clearances again. And then your customer comes and rides their bike for the first time, and that too is like food for our soul. In the way that the charging system and the ignition are behind the scenes, and you can't tell that the improvement has been made, we do the same thing with safety at the back of the bike too. So rather than that modest little anemic light bulb that's in there as a taillight and brake light, we put a board in there that's got an LED array on it so that this is the kind of brightness you get from the tail light. They still throw us off every once in a while. We think the brake light's on because it's so bright and it's only the tail light. But when you hit brakes, if there's somebody behind you watching TikTok videos, their head's going to come up and they're going to see that you're slowing down and not run into the back of you. So it's always a nice thing that we do for our customers. It lets them know that we care about their safety and we want them to have a long, enjoyable experience with the bike. And they make great second bikes. There's no better second bike to have than a vintage bike, because the character of the riding is different, the ownership experience is different. Emotionally, they deliver in the sport in ways that a modern bike just can't do. As a bit of a coincidence, we had completed this bike in time to bring it to the most storied one-day classic motorcycle event in the Mid-Atlantic. From New York to Florida, the largest one-day classic motorcycle event is Classic Motorcycle Day, held in Mount Airy, Maryland, every year. And we had a total of 5 machines present that day. A couple of other customers had brought their bikes, and every one of our bikes got an honorable mention or higher. The orange R75, we knew we were in the hunt to place well for BMW, but we won first place. And there were a couple of hundred machines on the field that day and about 25 other BMWs in our class. So to carry a class win is an incredibly wonderful feeling and a bit of validation among our peers. And we were having so much fun in that moment, taking pictures and shaking hands and everything, that we almost missed the last announcement, and that was for Best in Show. The best bike on the field, and Kevin Parker's orange R75/5 won that class as well. Our R75 won Best in Show as well. And so this is the kind of thing that keeps us going, that motivates us and inspires us to do more, to grow and evolve. It was quite a day. It was quite an extraordinary day.